Welcome, friends. Dr. Jim Daly here, and latest edition of The Sky Tonight. Today is Friday, September 13th, and we have a special event happening tonight, the full moon. And it's not just any full moon, it's the harvest moon. We've spoken about this in the past, and well, this year's harvest moon, 2019, occurs today, Friday the 13th. If we look east of south, right over here, we see the moon just hanging, hovering above the eastern horizon, waiting to come up, rise slowly towards the meridian at 12:30 a.m., reaches peak altitude and peak brightness. And if we look towards the south and further to the west, we see our familiar favorites that we've been paying much attention to over the course of the summer. You see Saturn here, still in Sagittarius. Zoom in on Saturn. Here's Saturn's moon, Titan, Enceladus, Dione, all Saturn's moons. Okay, zoom back out. We have Jupiter, also now sitting to the northeast of Antares, still here, with its Galilean moons, Io, Callisto, Ganymede, and Europa, named by Galileo when he first spotted them in 1609. Okay, so that's the sky tonight, high in the south. As the sun sets, the sun setting time was 7:02 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time today, and even though the moon is setting earlier and earlier, we still have a lovely evening sky. It's a little bit after, right now it's about 7:30 in this view. Stars are beginning to come out, ever so slowly. As the sky goes from sunset through twilight to deep twilight and then to night, we see the early autumn sky starting to unfold. The summer constellations, although still prominent, such as the Summer Triangle high overhead, Deneb, Vega, and Altair, they are starting to move towards the west, and the constellations of the early fall will be with us very shortly. And don't forget, the autumnal equinox is coming up on Monday, September 23rd of this year, 2019. That's the official beginning of fall, and we'll have equal hours of daylight and darkness. Okay, 12 hours of day, 12 hours of night. That happens at 3:50 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time on Monday, September 23rd this year. Okay, so that's when we can expect things to really start changing. Okay, but now though, we still have the summer constellation still well placed. Right, Sagittarius, Scorpio. Aquarius is over here. Aquarius is considered a fall constellation. Okay, high overhead we still have Cygnus the Swan, the Northern Cross here. Aquila the Eagle, another celestial bird right here, and Lyra the Harp. Those are summer constellations, generally considered to be summer constellations. We have Delphinus over here, a little dolphin, and Sagitta, little arrow, and Vulpecula the fox right here. These are all considered summer constellations. We have Ophiuchus over here. These are all going to start moving towards the west-northwest now as the days and weeks march on, as fall becomes more and more into view. All right, and officially begins on Monday, September 23rd, the autumnal equinox. There's two equinoxes every year and two solstices. We have the beginning of spring in March, at the vernal equinox, and the beginning of autumn on the autumnal equinox this year, occurring on Monday, September 23rd. Okay, so take a look here. We have a harvest moon. That's our moon tonight, just rising. Still hanging low in the southeast as twilight continues, right? The harvest moon will appear tonight, Friday, September 13th, reaching peak fullness or peak brightness at 12:33 a.m. That will be only 30 minutes into tomorrow, the 14th. So let's keep an eye out for that, right? So what does this mean? What are these moons? These various names of the moon are named in as commemorations, as ways to recall specific events that happen throughout the year by the native indigenous to this continent, the Indians, right? The harvest moon, because the days are getting shorter now, and on the autumnal equinox, we go from the summer solstice was the 20th of June. All right, that's when we have the longest day and the shortest night. From that point to this point, the days are getting shorter. And now today, on this date, every September, the harvest moon, what this does, the full moon's light extends the harvest. This time of the year, all the products and all the richness from the land is harvested in preparation for the cold winter months coming. Okay, so these are the traditions passed down from the native indigenous to our continent, the American Indians, and we have these names to honor and commemorate those events and those traditions. Okay, back in June we had the strawberry moon and so forth. You can read all about these very interesting stories here in the Almanac, otherwise known as the Farmer's Almanac, almanac.com. All right, you just choose astronomy, and you can choose full moons, phases, next full moon, etc. The sun rises and sun sets, and the moon rises and moon sets. Okay, and tonight's moon is the full moon, the harvest moon. Tonight is Friday, September 13th. Okay. So getting back to our sky, let's take a look towards the west. Arcturus is still there. We have the Big Dipper with the handle of the Dipper right here. Big Dipper, as we know, is an asterism in and of itself. It's not a formal constellation in its own right. It's what we call an asterism, an easily recognized recognized pattern in the sky, depicting a certain item that's familiar to all of us. In this case, it's a dipper. Here's the handle, and here's the ball of the dipper. And we arc to Arcturus. We've spoken a lot about Arcturus, so we're not going to really talk about Arcturus that much. The previous video we did was a video without narration. We did use the Big Dipper as a landing point, as a springboard or as a benchmark to find another interesting star and associated constellation in the sky. And that was these two stars. These are what we call the pointer stars, Merak and Daly. These two stars point to Polaris, the North Star. Okay, Polaris is the brightest star in Ursa Minor, the Lesser Bear. Okay, let's put the constellations back for a moment. And it looks like a Little Dipper. Here's the handle of the Little Dipper and the bowl of the Little Dipper. But see, in our modern culture, in our modern civilization, we see these patterns as tools and objects of utility, whereas the ancients, they saw them more in a mythical sense, right? Hence the names. Okay, this is the Lesser Bear right here. Here's Ursa Major, the Great Bear, and you can see the Big Dipper here is part of a greater constellation here. The claws of the of the bear is 4 claws and his hind claws, and the arc of the handle here of the Dipper is his tail. Okay, so we featured that in the previous video, which was unnarrated, and I just thought I'd mention it now, just to show you. Okay. And what is so significant about Polaris? Polaris is what they call the North Star. It just happens to lie close to the point on the sky, what we call the North Celestial Pole, which is a projection of the Earth's pole, the North Pole, onto the sky. So as the Earth rotates, we look up towards that point on the sky. Any object located right on that point would not move, it would remain motionless in the sky, but Polaris is less than 1 degree from that point, so it looks like it's stationary for the entire night. All right, and it's easily recognized. It's a bright enough star. And so if you're out at night and you lose your way, you can easily find your way, or find your directions by identifying Polaris. And then east is always to the right, west is always to the left of north, south is directly behind you. Okay, so there's an easy way to find your way around at night. If you lose your directions, you just find the North Star and you can navigate quite easily. Over here, continuing, we have Cassiopeia, the queen, the celestial queen. All right, let's put the constellations back for a moment. Right here. Right now she looks like a W. When she's on the other side of the sky, she'll look like an M. Okay, she's the celestial queen, Cassiopeia, based on Greco-Roman mythology. Okay. And now we can start to see the Milky Way here. The galactic center is beginning to become visible as the hours, as the minutes pass by. The sky is moving forward. All right. It's a lovely sky this evening, and it's a beautiful view. It's nice and comfortable out, still nice weather. You go outside, you face due south, and this is what you'll see. It's a lovely sky. And you look over to the east, and there's the moon, just hanging low on the horizon, lighting your way. All right, folks. I just wanted to mention that tonight is the harvest moon, Friday, this September 13th. It's very rare that the moon is a full moon, rises on a Friday that happens to be the 13th. Okay. Often, many times, the moon is called a supermoon. Well, that's not the case with this moon tonight. The reason they call it the moon is referred to on some occasions as a supermoon is because, as in all cases in nature, one object orbiting another, there's no such thing ever as a perfectly circular orbit. The orbit is always some kind of ellipse. Most of the time it's an ellipse who's very close to being a circle, perfectly circular, but it's never the case. And therefore, because it's an ellipse, you're going to have a point in its orbit where it's furthest from what we call the focus, which is two points within the ellipse that is defined by the ellipse, by the orbit itself. And that's the apogee. The perigee is the closest point. All right. So many times a supermoon will simply be the moon, the full moon phase that happens to coincide with the perigee, or its closest point to the Earth, and therefore the moon will appear slightly larger simply because it's closer. Okay. You'll see that often. A lot of times they'll talk about it in news reports and so forth, and that's the reason why we call it a supermoon, because it's slightly bigger. Tonight that's not the case, though. In fact, the moon is a little bit further out in its orbit on tonight, on September 13th tonight. Okay. Going forward, what we're going to be doing is start to talk more and more about the fall constellations and what we can see in the upcoming videos. Overhead, we still have the Summer Triangle, as I mentioned, and we're going to talk a little bit more about what those, because we haven't really spoken a lot about some of the surprises and some of the lovely objects to observe with binoculars or a telescope up in this part of the sky. So we're going to focus on that in a later video. But for now, I just wanted to point out tonight's the harvest moon, full moon tonight, Friday the 13th. And please, everybody, if you like this video, please do like, subscribe, and share. And as always, please keep looking up.